Hello and welcome to Season 2 of On the Road With. My name's Gareth and I'll be your host. For those of you that are joining me for the first time today, this show is all about talking to touring professionals in the performing arts and entertainment industries about the realities of life on the road, what it's meant for their mental health, the people they've worked with and how they got started. I'd like to thank you all sincerely for your support for the show so far. If you haven't already, you can like my page on Facebook or follow me on Instagram or Twitter. It's Gareth John Music on those platforms, and I'll be posting updates about the show on those platforms. You can also like, follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcast fix. Now on the show today, I've got somebody that I've wanted to get on the show for quite a while. She's a polymath, a multidiscipline artist and a singer that I've worked with in the past, but she's also involved in the theatre industry, the film world, writing poetry, music education and lots more, as we find out in this extensive chat. She's had a lot of past chart success with songs featured on major film releases, and it was my absolute pleasure to talk with Miss Carol Leeming. Carol, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. How's
the lockdown kind of situation been treating you? I know we've caught up once, I think, during this period, other than talking today. So what's been going on?
Well, first of all, like so many people, as a self-employed person in the arts, I had a lot of plans, particularly around the spring period, and they just all got chucked out. It's just, I'm going to use that word that everybody uses. I'm afraid it's the only one that works. It's totally unprecedented. We've got nothing like this to sort of judge from before. We have to take it day by day, week by week.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just started as a part-time lecturer on the Performing Arts BA Honours course at Montfort University.
Yeah.
And I was teaching for 2 weeks and then went into lockdown. So part of my lockdown experience has been doing remote online teaching work and tutorials, because groups of those students have, working groups, they've had to submit performance assignments which they've videoed and they've had to send in. And so, a week or two ago, I was busy marking those and assessing them. So that was part of it. But in terms of my own work, I have a consultancy with an arts group, and I've been doing that remotely, doing my consultancy work via the video and doing that. And I've also been doing some work with Too Funky. I did a live streaming the launch event for the Too Funky Music Festival. And then coming up this Saturday, I'm kicking off hosting 12 weeks of their virtual concert series again, which will be online. So on balance, when you look at it, I've been doing quite a lot online, as well as, keeping in touch with family and friends. But actually, I have been doing some work online, and it's meant a huge learning curve for me, as it has for many other people, having to think how to put things online and present it in such a way that people can access. I'm also a writer, and I think I've made one attempt at a COVID lockdown style poem, but I'll be honest, I haven't actually been doing any writing. But what I have been doing, I also do visual art. I've been doing some blackening pictures as well. An awful lot of reading. Watching hundreds of films.
Same here.
And then other than that, thinking and reflecting, having deep thoughts. I think a lot of people have found this time, the positive of it is that you can do a lot of deep thought, reflecting and planning for the future. But it also has been a challenge. I'm a social being. I like going out. I like going dancing, partying, listening to live music, going to the cinema, going and get my cappuccino. These things I can't do. And that's been challenging as well. And sometimes there's moments where you feel a bit isolated. And you just want to hug people and things like that, and you can't do it. So there's been positives and negatives.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, I was talking with Dennis Rollins on one of the previous episodes, and he was saying that musicians need to think now about 18 months' time? How is our industry going to look? How are we going to have to change? How can we work with promoters and venues to ensure that everybody stays afloat? There's a big need for solidarity in the industry at the minute, and just try and adapt and don't resist change, and try and do things differently.
I think it's easier for artists to collaborate and have solidarity, but venues and business entities and promoters and all these sort of people, I think it's harder. They should do it, but I think it's harder for them to do. I mean, I also work in theatre. You work in the live music sector, and both these, nobody knows the answer. It's going to be, we don't know exactly what's going to happen at the moment. People are putting music online, people are making festivals online, but we always work in advance. Like you say, what's going to happen in 6, 12 or 18 months? Will some of these festivals, will live venues open? They have business plans. They're going to have to say, well, our venue is 500, but actually when we reopen, whenever that is, we can only accommodate X amount. Do you know what I mean? So the economic implications of what you've just talked about are huge.
Massive,
and people need to be discussing. I know I've posted on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, I know that artists are collaborating, as we speak. Artists are collaborating, and they're doing things together, and they're making it free, a lot of it. Not all of it's monetized.
No, it's
they're
not.
Sharing
no.
they're sharing information, they're sharing skills, they're doing anything. Even before the lockdown, you had bands who would collaborate, and if one of them was the headliner, they'd probably get somebody else on the bill, and that favour was returned somewhere else. If another band got a gig, they'd invite that band. I mean, I think it's easier for artists to collaborate and share, but it's actually venues, managers, promoters. It's not always part of their mindset.
It's a different mindset, isn't it? It's a different one.
And there's still a lot of fear and anxiety about the economic landscape. I think that's also a bit of a sort of barrier for them as well, because they just can't see in their mind what is it going to look like, whereas artists have already gone, okay, we're in a lockdown, I'm going to do stuff online. Some of them are monetizing it, some of them are collaborating and sharing, but I don't necessarily see that with venues at the moment. Theatre sector, I don't know about music venues, are saying the government needs to invest money.
Well, they do,
for a rescue package. But I suspect that's not quite the same for music venues.
No, there's a massive Save Our Venues campaign, and a lot of artists have been involved in that. I mean, just look at it where we are locally.
It's happened as well. Yes.
Yeah.
And presumably there might be some campaigns nationally, but again, they may. And I'm going to fly the flag again for Leicester, as a Leicester-based artist and musician, is that often everything's focused north and south of the Midlands, and particularly the East Midlands. We miss out on a lot of things. And I think, again, in this new landscape and scenario, I think it's going to be really important for people like Leicester City Council and others to say that we have great culture here, great music and whatever, and that if there's any government rescue packages, to make sure that this city benefits from that, because we often get overlooked because we're not Birmingham, we're not Manchester, we're not Bristol, we're not Sheffield, we're not, do you understand? So I think that's important, and that's really for our politicians to make sure that message goes across. But it's also for us musicians as artists to say to our politicians locally, because I think that's where they default a lot, is to safeguard our livelihoods and our venues as best possible. And if there's any government rescue package, to make sure that Leicester has part of that.
Yeah, good point. And as a local Labour Party member, you've given me some pause for thought actually there.
Good.
Especially with it being, in my view, thankfully, a Labour city.
Yes, it is.
You've given me some pause for thought. So, as you've just said, you've worked a lot in theatre, in film, in education, on stage with bands. I've been on stage with you loads of times with different bands. Which medium would you say is your first love, and why?
I get this question all the time because I'm classed as a polymath and a multi-artist, and I honestly won't say there's one that I prefer than any other. And I know that's maybe hard for some people to understand. I mean, you know, I probably started in music and all the other things came later on, you know, theatre, filmmaking and poetry. But I actually, from an Afrocentric point of view, they're all different modes, and to me they're all on par. You know,
Yeah.
I love them all. I sometimes do them all together, but often I do them in phases, and I probably would privilege a bit music. Having said that, I'm not doing that much music at the moment, but music is just something that's in my life completely all the time on a daily basis. And what I
In
mean
some
by that,
form or other, sort of thing.
yeah, I'm either singing, I'm doing my vocal exercises, I'm listening to music every day. Music's part of my DNA. Let's just say that. And then sort of writing and all the other things kind of probably would come a bit after. But I do love them all. You know, I think of my poetry as word music, and I think of filmmaking and video making as visual music, you know, in the way I put them together. But yeah, probably just slightly privileged music.
It's funny because with the lockdown, I've also expanded kind of what my portfolio looks like, if you like. And not just being a trumpet player and singer, but now a podcast host and a radio presenter.
Yes.
And I've really, really enjoyed it, and it's kind of like, I look at it a bit like when people say, "What's your favourite style of music?" I go, "Well, it depends what day and time it is, like how I'm feeling."
Well, that's it exactly. You know? What mood are you in on the day?
Yeah.
And I give you credit for that, Gareth, because you know, again, I remember when I started out, people couldn't quite get that I did all these different things and did them really well.
And you get some stick for it as well, don't you? Sometimes.
And well, I had a boyfriend who sort of thought there was something wrong with me psychologically. Like, what are you trying to prove? And I had to explain to him that I didn't know. It's been a journey. It's been a journey of discovery. And the one thing I would say is that I was open to trying different things. I mean, and none of it was planned. You know, I did sound engineering simply because I was fed up of going into a studio and being dissatisfied with the results and not being able to have a proper conversation with engineers. So I just went off and studied sound engineering. And I suppose the where I'm fortunate is that I'm a very fast learner, and I'm able to absorb a lot of information and learn really quickly. So I'm able to try all sorts of things and end up being really good at them. Now, not everybody's going to be like that, but one of the things that I notice sometimes is people do limit themselves because other people say, like they have said to you and me, well, you're a singer-songwriter, aren't you? Yeah, but I'm also a percussionist, but I also write poetry. You know, so people find it easier for them to sort of have you with one label.
Put you in a box.
Yeah, put you in a box. But if you are one of those people, and I want to mention, not everybody is, Gareth. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
A lot of people do one or two things and they do it really well, and that's them.
And there's nothing wrong with that either.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's who they are. But more and more, I notice there's more and more people, what we used to call when I did a short course about, you know, sort of IT and computers and the internet age, what's called a transliterate artist. Now, transliterate artist is literally using different modes to express themselves, and in particular using, you know, like, you know, podcasting, using different mediums, different digital
vlogging and doing blogs.
Exactly. I mean, we haven't even talked about that, but again, that's something else I got into. I've got a blog that's got 28,000 views, but you know, that's another story. But that's what a transliterate artist is, that they are, you know, in this time able to utilize different digital media, you know, basically to do things online and offline, you know, and do it effectively. And that's becoming more of a norm. And I suspect after the lockdown, there might be other artists who are opening up to more of that simply because they've had to.
Yeah.
But you've got into some new things. I know that I've been doing blogging and doing lots of other things. But yeah, like you, I've been asked, why aren't you doing a podcast, or why haven't you started teaching online? I have to say, prior to the lockdown, I was shying away from teaching online. I had a lot of requests to do vocal coaching online, for example, and I was like, no, I want to do it one-to-one, and it was like that. But since the lockdown, I have added to my skill set and opened up to new ideas about what I can be doing online.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've had to as well. I mean, if you look at the DMU jazz band album is pretty much finished. I've actually emailed Neil before I called you with some tweaks, but it's pretty much there. And and that's been sort of a quarter completed, should I say, or a third completed in lockdown. So we actually had Steve Nutter driving round to people's houses in his car with the mic, with the leads running from the living room out to the car, and people recording in their living room. Which
wonderful.
It created a couple of technical problems, but actually, it was quite an inventive way of doing things. And
I think where there's a will, there's a way. And all I would say is that one of the things we have to remember is there will be a day, none of us can say when it is, when this will be all over.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I would encourage, as I'm doing, to keep my dreams and plans about what I want to do next. And yeah, there will be challenges, but to keep those, really. Do you know what I mean? Because you can surprise yourself. Where there's a will, there's a way with what you can actually maybe achieve.
Well, I think that's quite a good point, Carol, to play your first choice today, which is "Bridge Over Troubled Water" by Aretha Franklin. Why did you choose that one?
Well, I took immense influence from Aretha Franklin growing up, and we lost her not so long ago. And her contribution to black music is immeasurable. I've honoured her, written a poem about her and everything, and I just find she gives comfort and solace, but inspiration in this particular song, which I know was equally beautiful, but in a different way, by Simon and Garfunkel. But what she does with it is something special. It's so soulful.
Don't trouble the water. I won't get it on. Why don't you let it be? Still water run deep. Yes, it do. I know that. Oh, yeah. If you only believe. Don't trouble the water. Said I leave it alone. Why don't you let it be? Still water run deep. Yes, it do. Yes, it do. Oh, yeah. If you only believe when you're down, when you're on the street, when evening falls so high, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes,
Okay, thanks for that, Carol. I'd like that one. I've sang the Simon and Garfunkel version myself a few times, and
Yes.
I'd not heard that one until you Aretha's
really?
version of it until you put me onto it. No, so
Okay.
so interesting with that one. In terms of going back to the sort of focus of vocals then and being a singer.
Yes.
One thing that cropped up in my mind when I was reading your biog was a number of different styles you've worked in, and as a trumpet player, I've done that a lot myself, as you know.
Yes.
But as a singer, not so much. I'm starting to, but not so much because I'm younger as a singer, if that makes sense. But you know, I've always kind of gone, no, you're a swing jazz singer, stick to that. So, what do you think the benefits and the downsides are of doing a lot of working in a lot of different genres as a singer? Do you think it's a case of specify and sort of specialise in something, or do you think that the benefits of singing in a wider array of styles outweigh that?
Well, I think these things come down to personal choices, preferences, aptitudes, and abilities. And for myself, you know, I had that sort of history where I was singing in the choir at school, but, you know, going to black churches, singing there. And then, you know, I get to Leicestershire School of Music, and then I encounter classical music. And also growing up singing soul and jazz and gospel, and then I encounter classical music, and I find it's beautiful, and I love it, and I enjoy it, and I can do it. And so for me, I've never felt restricted in terms of what style I think I should or I would want to do.
Yeah.
And that's because I think the voice is an incredible instrument, and it can do so many different things. And so my own philosophy, if you like, and it's how I work with my vocal students, is that basically you can sing anything, and you can just develop the voice, and then you can apply it to different styles and genres of music. Now, what kicks in there is what is your preference, what makes you buzz in terms of a particular style of music. So if you don't like classical music, well, maybe you're not going to sing it so well, even though you can. Potentially you have a voice, you could sing classical music. So I think it comes down to personal preference. I don't think there's a, you know, as I say, the way I work with my students, often they come to me and they want to sing soul and R&B and jazz and whatever. And especially when I was working at Leicester Music Academy, that was fine. We'd do all that because we had regular concerts, as you know. But sometimes I would ask a student to learn a classical song, just for the exercise of it.
Good idea.
And they would discover that they liked it, B, that they could do these things that were required. And so that was a new door that opened for them. Equally, there are other students who wouldn't want to do that. They just want to learn jazz, R&B, or whatever it is, or do classical or folk or whatever style it is. And I myself, I've also experimented, and I'm still learning, by the way. My vocal development and growth hasn't stopped. You know, I continue to want to learn about the voice and how it works, but also I've studied Indian singing, I've looked at Arabic singing, you know, to add to my musicality, if you will, when it comes to singing. But yeah, I do a lot of jazz, soul, funk, gospel, you know, but equally, and I've surprised a few people, I can sing, you know, English and Irish folk songs really well, or do classical, or do music theatre, you know. The voice is that plastic and elastic, you know, once it's kind of trained up and you have the mindset and you've studied that genre and style of music. You can't do it if you don't study the genre and style of music. So for example, if you're doing R&B, there's a certain way to do riffs and trills. If you're doing classical, there's a different way to do trills. And likewise, if you're doing African singing or Arabic singing or Indian singing. But guess what? They all use scales.
They do.
You know,
they do.
And
yeah.
it's all music, and you just have to study. So basically, that's what I would say. I think people sometimes limit themselves. You know, I've had students, you know, I have advanced, intermediate students and beginners, and I have some intermediate and advanced say, I only sing country, and I listen to them. I think, but should we try some jazz? Because you can sing jazz as well, you know. And I'm always looking to try and find more jazz singers, by the way. They're a
Yeah.
bit thin on the ground.
Well, they really are. They really are.
So
I'm
if
trying
I
to
can-
develop a few as well. Yeah.
So if I can get a country singer who can do a bit of jazz as well, that's great. You're adding to the cohort. But yeah, as I say, my philosophy is that the voice can do anything if it's trained in the study, if you've done the study. But more importantly, if it connects with you. If it doesn't connect with you, then you're not going to do it well. You can teach someone to sing a classical song and they won't add anything to it because they're not really feeling it. But then there's somebody who's never sung it and they've learnt it and they've done it and they've discovered that actually they quite like it and they sing it quite well. So,
And yeah, it
it's all
means something
music.
to you. Yeah.
It's all music for me. It's all good. Yeah. My only rule about music, I try not to get too stuck down in genres. I have to talk to people about genres and styles. But, if my general rule is if I like it, then, that's good music.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's one thing going back to the songs connecting with you, and then meaning something to you. One really big bit of advice I had from a fellow swing singer who'd been doing it a lot longer than me was he said, when you get given a song, because I was singing with Leicester Big Band at the time, so I was kind of given the songs each month to sing. It wasn't like I was an artist yet. Yeah. And he said, when you get your lyric sheet and they say, right, you're doing this one, Matt Monroe, Sinatra, whatever it is, he said, you've got to look at it and read the lyrics and then think about how am I going to sing, if the words say fall down, there's a certain way you could sing that in the context. And, and you look at a bit, somebody broke your heart or something like that. You've got to make the audience feel, oh, poor guy, you know what I mean?
I think that's very good advice. And it's advice I use myself and for students. I mean, you are an interpreter of a song and of those lyrics, and you have to convey those lyrics, but somewhere along the line it needs to connect with you.
It does,
because I also teach acting, and it's the same with acting. I want to believe you as an audience member. I want to believe you. And so if you look at a play script or if you look at a song lyrics, you've got to look at it and find out where you can connect with it, because where you connect with it, you'll be able to convey it really effectively. And the voice is the most revealing instrument, of a person, whether it's speaking or singing. It reveals an awful lot about a person. And that's where the authenticity of expression comes in. So reading the lyrics and connecting with it. I've often said producers used to send me songs and still do sometimes. And I used to always say, I'll listen to it. And if I can connect with it, then we can have a conversation. But if I listen to it and I don't feel anything in the music or don't think I can add lyrics because I'm not feeling something in the music, then I will not waste their time and I will say, I think this is for somebody else.
Yeah, you've got to be honest about that, really, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so. To do a great performance anyway, and to give as true a performance as you can. Yeah, it's important.
While we're on the subject of jazz, Carol, I'm reading through your blog, and some of it I knew from our conversations and things like that. And I'm reading through going, okay, Tony Kofi, I remember she did that. She was telling me about that. And then I just saw Leicester Jazz Festival, and I thought, hey?
Yeah, Leicester Jazz Festival.
You what? Come again.
Those were the days. So you're talking about in the early noughties there. And
so not all that long ago then, really?
Not that long ago, no. What you had was, and they're still there, it's Leicester Jazz House.
Right, okay,
and, it's Leicester Jazz House, and there was a guy called Chris Beggs who was part of Leicester Jazz House. And he was very much, I would say, a positive force, because he also set up a separate production outfit. Right. And he... with others created, Leicester Jazz Festival, and Leicester Jazz House was involved. But, it was a bit like when Mello Baku and her partner set up, what was it called? I can't remember now. A few years back, they did like a smaller jazz festival. I remember it. And Mello was part of Jazz House. So what I'm highlighting here, my first point, is that Leicester Jazz House is there and it's doing an important job. But I think other people have come along and said that it needs to be a broader church in terms of the offer of jazz.
Absolutely,
and having a bigger vision. And Chris Beggs had a huge vision, and he was behind the Sankofa Commission, which was a Millennium Commission, which I was one of the composers with Tony Kofi and all of that. But we had a festival. And the thing about doing a festival is, Coventry's had a jazz festival, and we don't have one now, but I think that will come back. I hope that will come back, because again, I've seen the jazz go down like embers, and then I've seen it flare up again, and then I've seen it go down, and then I've seen it come up again, and I think we're on the up again. And I hope, it is my sincere hope, that we can, when things are better, look at doing another jazz festival in Leicester, no matter how small, because but also for that jazz festival to be broad, to have your Major Roos and some of these other fusions of jazz, as well as just kind of straight jazz. Like jazz for me is a very broad, we could have a broader range, a broader offer.
Absolutely.
Of jazz, hip hop, jazz, different types of jazz. And I think people like, Mello and Marcus, when they joined Jazz House, I was hoping for more of that. And to be fair, they did change some of the programming, but I think there's more to be developed there. So yes, we used to have a very good jazz festival, but we don't have it anymore.
Well, you look at, I've always said this when me and Marcus have talked. I don't know Mello as well as I do Marcus, but whenever me and Marcus have talked, is that, and I know he does, I know he hears me on it, is that, and I'm not, and I also know by his face, I'm not the first person to say it, and I know that he believes it as well, is that you look at like the jazz talent in Leicester, and you've got everything from, so not to blow my own trumpet, but if I took my big band down there and we're swinging away, then you've got Major Roos, which is completely different. You've got the Status Trio. We haven't even mentioned them yet.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yes.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And you've got Mello. You've got the Brasstards doing the New Orleans stuff. You've got
the Four Masons.
Four Masons. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you've got Casa Far as well.
Casafar, we're at a moment, this is what I'm saying, we're at a moment, and it's not the right moment now with COVID, but that doesn't stop us planning and thinking. I think we can go back to having some sort of a festival with a really broad offer, not just with local, but we could, reach out to Nottingham and Coventry and Birmingham. People like Wayne has a lot of contacts across the Midlands, and he's involved in a jazz show. And that's something else, by the way, we used to have back in the day. We used to have more jazz, specifically jazz jams. I mean, we have Status Trio, but where's Mosquito Coast now? We used to have the Secret Jazz Company, and we used to have Jules Holland, if he was gigging at De Montfort, he'd come down and play because they had a piano there. We had Randy Crawford and people like that drop in after their gig, and you'd have all these local jazz musicians. We'd all jam. Fantastic. So hopefully that will come again one day, but we can plan and talk in the meantime.
Absolutely. I mean,
and also we have some better venues now. Hopefully they'll reopen, but I personally have seen great gigs at the Y, but I particularly enjoy them at the venue.
And the Attenborough Centre.
And Attenborough Centre is another one. So
I mean, DMU have got have got a lot of big plans. I can say that, being involved, that they've got a lot of big plans for jazz in the city.
I'm also a fan of world music and studying world music, and so if I give an example of one of the bands that you're in, Brasstards, I have problems with the term world, but it just it's just a shorthand. But you're doing that New Orleans stuff. We need to have a broader view about what can be programmed. I mean, I think what would be good is to have guest programmers as well. So that I think they tried to do this at the Haymarket, but it wasn't quite organised right. But so then you get a broad menu of things. Do you know what I mean? I'm still a fan of big band. I mean, one of my first bands ever in my singing career was a band called Fanfare. I'm not sure if it's on my bio, but it was Fanfare. They were a huge big band. We were doing all the 40s and the Glenn Miller songs and all of that. So I've still got a soft spot for big bands, and of course I've done stuff with Afro City Swingers because I love South African jazz, and that's what they play. So when Claude Depper comes up,
great guy.
I'm brought in to work with him and to sing with them.
He's an incredible player, Claude is.
brilliant. But he's one of my old tutors, you see.
Right, okay.
When I started in jazz, the reason why I started in jazz was due to Rob Charles. So Rob Charles in the 80s used to go to a place called Community Music, and he inveigled me to go with him, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I went there and all the jazz warriors, Claude Depper, all you know, Orphy Robinson, all of them, they were also tutors there. So I had two tutors. I had Alan Weeks, jazz guitarist, and I had Claude Depper, who were very, very influential on me developing. I was the only singer there, by the way, so I had to sit with the horn section. But that's where I learned my bebop chops.
Yeah, what better place to do that than sitting with the horns as well?
People, and then later on, years later, I do get to work with Gary Crosby and Dennis Baptiste and all these sorts of people. I've sung with them. So it was a continuation. But I had to go to London to get it. And I think what I'd love for the future is for young people, and this is probably why I'm involved in music education now, it's another conversation, is that it'd be nice to have that access to jazz musicians here and young people here, you know, access jazz. Izzy Barrett, who's part of National Jazz orchestras and whatnot, she's from Leicestershire, but when she was in Leicester years ago, the Leicester education at that time was not interested in teaching jazz. I think we're in a different world now, I hope for the future that we can use local and other jazz people to develop jazz learning in our city. Jazz and world music learning. I'll say jazz and world music learning in our city.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, another show I'm sort of planning. On the back of this is a music education show. So I'll definitely get you on for a conversation on that, because it's and
I'm passionate about young people.
Absolutely,
While we're on that point, you know, that's why I did a consultancy last year for the Leicestershire Music Hub, and they are now enacting the recommendations that I made. We now have a sort of diverse music citywide network. It's called a BME network, but it will be looking at jazz house is part of it, Asian, African music. You know, we need that for Leicester. We never had it before, so I'm actually hopeful for the future that young people coming up and other people. I mean, I think we should have still masterclasses. You know, when Tony Kofi came to work in this city, people had access to a world-class musician. That we should have masterclasses, and we should have more for young people coming up for their music education.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's quite a good point to play your next choice, Carol, on your track. So,
politically, I think this is good. Bob Marley was also very political, but this is a song where he says, "I'm a small axe, I'm going to chop you down." It's basically about the worm turning. It's about the those without power actually overcoming those with power. So
very prevalent at the minute, isn't it? Very
prevalent. so it's saying I'm gonna overcome you. I'm a small axe and you're a big tree, but I'm gonna chop you down.
If you want a big, big tree, we are a small axe, ready to cut you down, to cut you down. If you want a big, big tree, let me tell you that we are a small axe, ready to cut you down.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Carol. We two more points I want to kind of talk about. And
Yeah.
the first is related to the last, which what we discussed before the track, which is
Yes.
the Leicester music scene has got an
Leicester
abundance
music
of
scene.
talent.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's off the charts, you know.
I mean, I think, I have a longer view than you because I'm older. So I know, although I wasn't part of it, I know 60s, 70s was big, Leicester, okay? And then it goes into a different place in the 80s, although we had the Abbey Park, again, we had the Bomb Party, we had all these other big bands, in the 80s, the Abbey Park Festival photographs on Facebook.
Yeah, there's been lots of
showing that incredible history. And again, there was a flowering then. Then we had the General Idea, who were assigned by Quincy Jones in America. This was happening in the 80s. And then we have something else happening towards the end of the 80s into the 90s. We've got all the urban, well, we don't use that now, but we have drum and bass, we have hip hop, we have house, we have all this different music coming in, as well as bands.
Yeah.
And now where are we now? We've got people like Mahaley, we've got all sorts of people. Marco, we've got HQ, we've got
Easy Life.
flowering. Yeah, Easy Life. It goes on. It goes on. Leicester has always had. My own personal view is, notwithstanding the problems around venues at the moment in Leicester, but actually before the lockdown, we were healthier for venues than I can remember. Actually, we've got Too Funky, we've got other venues that were going on, the one in town on Lee Circle, where live music was going on, the Sheds.
Yeah, the Musician and the Donkey.
The Donkeys and it was the best as far as I can remember for live venues. But I've always felt one of the things a couple of things that holds the live music and the musicians back in the city. One of them is that our city council doesn't invest in it like they do in Nottingham and other places. I mean, actually champion and support the local music scene and see it as a massive asset to the city culturally. I'm hoping that will change. The second thing is we've suffered for a lack of managers and agents and people who can guide and sustain music careers. Now I know there's other musicians who take on that role as well as being musicians, and they're sorting out gigs and sorting out depths and all the rest of it, and I know you're part of that. But I'm talking about proper organizations that someone could build a career through. You know what I mean? Agents, managers,
labels, and then all the rest of it.
And then there's labels, and then there's financial and legal expertise, and it's probably more the legal, because I think there are some accountants around who know how to deal with music people or artists, but the legal, the copyright, it's so complex now about streaming incomes, how to monetize your income, but also the legalities. I mean, the music industry has changed in the last 20, 30 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you need the proper legal advice. I mean, even if you're going to set up your own label or put out your own music, business planning for musicians is something. We all know musicians who've been doing music 20, 30 years, but in terms of growth, or in terms of not just turning the wheel, but going to the next level. I mean, I remember I was talking to someone, I was telling them about online platforms to get gigs in places like Germany.
Yeah.
And places. Now, at that time, it was great because they realised that you could get really good money, better money than gigs over here. But unfortunately, I don't know what's going to happen to that market, not just because of COVID, but because of Brexit. Yeah.
Dennis was saying the same thing to me the other day. The double whammy of Brexit and COVID,
Brexit and COVID is a nightmare really for British musicians, and it's something we're going to have to negotiate. But we have to take comfort in the fact that this country has always been great at producing fantastic, innovative musicians, and what we're now facing is real hard challenges due to COVID. Although Europe's opening up because they're a bit ahead of us, but there's still the Brexit headache. And that's where politically we have to get onto our politicians as musicians and say, how are you going to help us navigate Brexit for us to continue to make our living? And as an artist, I want audiences in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Well, one, it's nearby. Two, the markets are there, the audiences are there. And, what Brexit just kind of cuts across that. So, we've got some, I think as musicians now, we need to politically, apply pressure through not just the musicians union or whoever, MC, whatever, but actually our local councillors and our MPs, importantly, for us to navigate Brexit. But of course, it doesn't help the fact that Brexit is not nailed down. Brexit hasn't finalised all its decisions, and it's like being in limbo. But I think that doesn't stop us saying what we want. Whatever happens with Brexit, we need to get to European markets. Now, when they think about Brexit, they think about farmers and sheep and all this,
fishermen and all that. Yeah.
But if you look at the gross domestic product, arts and creative industries, I think it's number 2, number 3. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So why are they not, focusing on what we need? We need to shout louder.
I think it's about, there's so many artists who and I applaud them for it, who promote what they believe in and what they're passionate about through their music. But I think we've got to go beyond that and actually engage politically. And be a serious player.
I think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, I think even just the events of the last week, I've seen things in the last week I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. Statues coming down, big companies, supporting Black Lives Matter. I know it's only words, but Lloyd's Bank and people saying, we're going to give money to black charities. I never thought I'd see these things. But equally, we as musicians, we never knew Brexit was coming. It's here. That's
right, yeah.
And as musicians, it's a direct threat to our livelihoods. And we've trained all our life and performed. We need to actually speak up politically. Through government channels, whatever, organise, because Brexit is a terrible threat to our livelihoods, and also it's made worse by COVID-19. So you're right. Instead of saying, I say it in my music, I think we have to start speaking politically.
My final point, Carol, is talking about it's a question I always ask anybody who's a performing artist of any sort, really, is stage versus studio. What's your preference? Which do you prefer working in? Because I've only worked with you in one of these arenas. So.
Yes, indeed. Again, I think I might slightly privilege stage because I am fully a performer.
Yeah, we share that passion, don't we, for putting on a show.
Yeah, and I put on a show and I love audiences. But guess what? I'm also, and people who know me closely know this, that I'm a nerdy geek.
Yeah.
And as a nerdy geek, because I've been part of quad electronic sessions, I can get quite geeky about sound and technology and all of that. So I actually like studio. Yeah. But what I have to do when depending where I am in the studio, sometimes I work as a producer. So that's one kind of zone that I go in.
Different head, isn't it? Different hat on, isn't it?
That's really geeky and sort of nerdy and techie, because, one, I've got to get the performance I want. And two, I'm going to work with the engineer to get all the sounds that I want and the mix that I want.
Yeah, I've been in that boat with DMU recently. It's a different head, different hat you've got.
And I love it. Yeah. I love it. I love every minute of it. And then the other side is when I'm at the mic, and then I have to create in my mind, using my imagination, a scenario for me to get the vocal performance that I want. And I love that too. There's something really exciting about getting the headphones on and creating the sound that I want to hear and being creative about that. So I have like two heads in the studio. You know, there's the performer head and then there's the producer head, and I love them both. They're just different. But I would privilege stage because there's nothing quite like a huge audience that you're having. I mean, I think Jocelyn Brown said it to me when she saw me perform. We were on the same bill at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah.
And I didn't know her then. And we were sound checking and I sang. And she called me over and she says, "Oh, you've got something." And she explained something to me. She said, "You know, you're singing out, and the audience is giving you something back, and then you kind of like transduce that, you know, and then it goes back out again. And it's that loop between the performer and the audience that's so important." And, you know, I really thanked her for that and we became friends after that. But that's really exciting. And I know a lot of artists say this, but when I'm in that zone, I'm in that zone. I'm like in another place, you know, it's almost transcendental sometimes, you know, that experience, and that's really rather special. But, you know, I can touch on that a little bit with my imagination in the studio. You know, I'm not in a studio, I'll make it, you know, somewhere where I'm at. I have been known to light candles and burn incense in the studio just to get the right vibe.
Yeah.
So but probably stage would just edge it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Carol, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Lovely talking to you. Yes, thank you. It's been lovely talking to you anytime. And, you know, I actually like sharing. I'm one of these people, I kind of remember things. All my friends say, "God, how do you remember that?" And I do remember things. And I remember all the good things about Leicester and its arts and culture and its music scene, you know, through different decades. So I just love talking about it. So thank you for asking me.
Well, the way I see it is, it's the coffee we would have had if we weren't in lockdown, you know, because we every now and then we just bump into each other and have a coffee, don't we? We don't plan it. I'll just see you I'll just see you at the clock tower. Yeah, Costa. Yeah, come on. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I see this as a continuing conversation, I hope, anyway. So, you know, I look forward to the day when we can talk more. But I certainly look forward to having further conversation with you over a decent cappuccino.
Oh, don't. I'm missing my coffees.
Oh, I know.
We've got the machine at home, but it's not quite the same.
No, it's not the same. I haven't got a machine at home. I'm just saving myself for when I can go to town. It's not long now. Early July, coffee shops will be open. So, yeah, that'd be nice. But, yeah, till then, as we say in Jamaica, more time.
That's the one. Cheers, Carol. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for the final episode of Season 2 of On The Road With. Can't believe how quickly it's gone, to be fair. It seems like yesterday that I was just sort of starting out podcasting. My guest for this special final episode was none other than Miss Carol Leeming, and I'd like to thank her sincerely for her time. It really does mean a lot. If you like what you're hearing, please do follow, subscribe and like us wherever you get your podcast fix. And you can also keep in touch with us on social media. So it's Gareth John Music on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And I'll be posting updates about the show, including new episodes and bonus content, etc. on those platforms. If you've got any guest suggestions or any feedback on the episodes at all, you can email me directly as well. It's garethrdjohn@gmail.com. If you'd also like to leave us a review at Apple Podcasts, that really does help spread the word of the podcast far and wide. That'd be absolutely fantastic. We're going to take a break now for a couple of weeks before Season 3 kicks off, but I'm going to play the show out for you with a track that Carol featured on from the soundtrack of Trainspotting. It's For What You Dream Of. Take care now. Bye-bye.